Next presenter is Professor Bhak Jong Hwa. He is the Genome Industrial Technology Center at UNIST, as well as the representative of Clinomics. And the title of his presentation is COVID-19 and Education of Inclusion Ideology Driven by Science Innovation. The title sounds quite interesting, and this is the last official presentation for today's forum. I understand that you must be very tired spending a lot of time here, but I'd like to ask for your attention to the presentation. So please leave questions on the chatting box. Professor Bhak, please. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. So the title of the presentation is Scientific and Innovative Education on Inclusion Ideology. As you know, one of the areas that is most affected by COVID-19 is education. Of course, there are changes in other sectors, like in the medical sector, but probably, in my view, education is the area that is most affected by COVID-19. So I'd like to thank the organizers, especially Mr. Oh Se-jung, president of the Seoul National University, for giving me this opportunity. COVID-19 is equivalent to the disasters that could be inflicted by the Third World War, if there is any. So I think that, and of course, one of the previous presenters talked about PC and AD, such expressions that are reported in the newspaper. But I think the COVID-19 is giving us the opportunity for us to reflect on ourselves. This is the conclusion of my presentation. That is, COVID-19 is a man-made disaster caused by the contamination of the political and economic ecosystem. So the basis for that is the misconception of the Darwinism. And I think that for the future, science and inclusive ideology will be the basis for future education. And COVID-19 should be an opportunity for us to think about a democracy again. Having happiness and having a high quality of lives is important, as mentioned in the previous presentations. But I think that to make that happen, what we need is inclusiveness that is scientific and innovative. These are the examples of the media coverage concerning people who took their lives in this COVID-19 situation. If I were them, probably I would not have made that kind of situation. However, in the current crisis, there are people who are losing their lives, who are taking their lives, killing themselves. That is shocking, because COVID-19 is a virus. It's caused by a virus. It's like a bacteria. However, looking at those people who are making an extreme choice, it seems to me there is a big gap between scientists and the citizens in terms of how they think of the crisis, the pandemic crisis. What is a life? The core element to the life is information. So the life is a body of information. It's a program of information that enables self-replication. So what do humans and viruses have in common? Self-replication. Just like human, actually the viruses are trying to self-replicate themselves. In order to that, they infiltrate into the human body. So viruses and humans have the same objective. So far, there are many infectious diseases, including cancer and aging. And also, over time, because of those changes, the perception that we have for the society or for the economy is changing as well. When we go deeper into the COVID-19, the structure of coronavirus is based on mathematical elements. So this is the structures of the infection virus. And within this system, within these structures, they have a balance in themselves. So it's like switching on and off. So the switching on and off, this kind of process goes on and on. As you see in the picture, sometimes, that structure is stretched, and some of the structures are combined together and detached from each other. So in the process, they make changes. For example, they make reactions to different temperatures. But if we have a good understanding of the virus, that will contribute to coming up with countermeasures for infectious diseases. As you see in this picture, there are small elements, and so these elements have information. And the coronavirus is regarded unstable, so because of that, people were very fearful of the virus in initial stages. So this is the structure of the hepatitis C type. But what about coronavirus? We don't know what kind of elements are inside a circular structure of the coronavirus. But it is based on RNA and DNA. And this is the structures of the hepatitis C and hepatitis C, and all the things here are interconnected. And such interconnection is done in a solid manner. Very stable structure. And this will become endemic. So next year and the 2 years later, it's going to be an endemic. So that means that we need to go with it. We need to live with it in the future. There are many living species in the world in this planet Earth. So there are genomes. So if you analyze genome, so inside the water, numerous numbers of viruses are inside. So the virus particles are so many in numbers. It's like 10 to the 31st. And 100 billion kinds of viruses infect 2 million species. When you do the research, there's a virus called HDRD. So that means that 8% of human genomes are real viruses. And in human body, about 40 or 50% of the viruses consists of genome particles. In some human bodies, the portion goes up to 80 or 90%. So through the process of evolution, these viruses have been collected by human bodies. And with the virus, in some aspects, the humans have been evolving. So now it's time for us to redefine the virus. So in that sense, I'd like to say that there are a lot of viruses in our human bodies, and those viruses process a lot of information and data. Because of the virus, the natural environment is being destructed. That's what many people are saying. However, I have a different perspective. The pure nature or pristine nature does not exist in reality. In this planet Earth, there are so many kinds of viruses, and the planet Earth is contaminated by the garbage that we created. What about Mars? Mars does not have air, and it doesn't have the same environment as the Earth. However, it's clean. So from some point, viruses that used to be poisonous are producing some kind of air. So the poisonous air used to be generated in the past. However, the viruses are generating new stuff, and so that was done by our ancestors. Viruses are coming and infiltrating into the human bodies through the respiratory system of humans. So when we usually talk about the planet Earth, it's covered with the green area. And the lawmaker, Mr. Lee Kwang-jae, talked about microbiome. But from another perspective, I would say that the microbiome itself is a collection of really filthy viruses. All those filthy viruses are intertwined with each other, and the Earth is based on many kinds of interactions, and much more than you think. But we have a tendency to apply dichotomy. So we think that this or that. So the viruses is something that we should stay away from. So that's kind of dichotomy way of thinking is being applied. But I'd like to say that the viruses and humans are intertwined with each other much more than you think. And so what is a life? And so I like to put an emphasis once again that COVID-19 is a man-made disaster. So first of all, it is really important to know that COVID-19 is a man-made disaster. Somebody asked the questions whether man really made the disasters or whether the disasters made human turn the virus into a crisis. But in fact, there are viruses all over the world or in the environment that we are in. However, if those viruses are not well managed enough, the virus becomes a problem. And because of the COVID-19 coronavirus, we are in a crisis. But what about the environment concerning us? So the U.S. and China conflict so the two nations were engaged in conflict, and there was environmental destruction, and the initial response to the disease was a failure, so it was not well done. In the process, this virus became more problematic, thus becoming the pandemic. So COVID-19 came in a situations where there is a trade war between the two superpowers. And also, when you look at the inside of the situation, there is what is more worrisome. From somewhere in the history, we began to be complacent, especially right after the Second World War. And now, countries around the world are good at making calculations, and they are money-centered. So there is a kind of international order where wealthy nations direct non-wealthy nations. So economy and culture, in many sectors, we didn't have a right level of philosophy. Of course, some people are saying that philosophy in this world has gone away, has passed away. So we need to look back on what kind of philosophy we used to have. And also, at the same time, what kind of philosophy do we need now? This is a question we need to tackle. So, at the basis of a man-made crisis is there a philosophy. And we had problems with the backbones of the philosophy. What I mean by backbones here is the misconception caused by Darwinism and survivor of the fittest. Especially in the Western world, the survival of the fittest or Darwinism was taken as something for granted. However, we need to rethink about it. And in the evolution theology, the things or elements in this world are based on symbiosis, and they are interconnected and interdependent. And in the process, there are areas for cooperations and collaboration. So what I'm telling you is that the viruses are the part of the elements of the environment, and the humans and the viruses are the ones that should coexist. So when it comes to life, we need to value diversity. And the same goes to bacteria, not only to viruses. So, for example, bacteria, mitochondria is one of the things that is generating energy for us. So we are living with them, and we are in this world together with them. But the COVID-19 pandemic has come due to the contaminations of the ecosystem that we have. And now we need innovation and scientific thinking. Just like a software, we need a new OS system. So we need to program ourselves so that we can have scientific thinking and innovation. The core to life is diversity, and inclusiveness is important as well. What I mean by inclusiveness? Inclusiveness is about embracing others who are different from me and who are different from us. So in this universe, there is a loop, the feedback loop, where plus and minus can be interconnected. The same goes to the democracy. So if someone is stubborn, through the feedback system, that kind of stubbornness or the problems can be reported and can be known to the general public. So when you disassemble democracy, at the bottom of the bricks that constitute democracy is there the feedback system. So the democracy mechanism and the life mechanisms, basically they are based on the same things. Whether it is democracy, whether it is the inclusiveness, the basic elements are the same, and the basic elements of whatever it is need to interact with each other for mutual existence. 100,000 years ago, and we used to eat each other. However, the reason why we could survive is scientific innovation. Scientific innovation should be based on critical and independent thinking, and through the feedback system, opinions needs to be interchanged or communicated. So this kind of communication system with the good negative system or with the feedback system should be in place. Rational and critical and independent way of thinking is needed for innovation and scientific mindset. And what should we do in this pandemic situation? First, pandemic will keep coming up. So absolutely it will come back. So we need to make preparations for creating an environment where such viruses cannot be destructive. I think Korea has less chances of having a pandemic, but it's not the case for other countries. So there are more pressures put on other countries, but that will affect Korea as well. So we need to prepare ourselves for that kind of situation. So in the long term, let's say that there's a change to the world. So when you think about future, what should we do? Back in 1920s, Korea was a colony, and in the 1950s, Korea was one of the poorest countries in the world. But now Korea has become one of the wealthy nations in the world. And COVID-19 gave the same question to every country in the world. But after that kind of testing, Korea all of a sudden took one of the highest ranking places in the test without knowing it. But compared to 50 years ago, compared to 100 years ago, Korea's position has been upgraded. So what was the main cause of that? Education, I think. So 80 or 90% of the students, they go to universities, and Korea is the only country with that kind of high ratio of university admission. But what we have been overlooking is the fact that we were focused on systems, not focusing on humans. So the collective intelligence is of course important. It's not wrong. However, we have been focused on just systems, establishing systems. However, we need to be more human-centered. So the core content for education in the future is IT-related programming education, coding and how to resolve the issues or how to resolve the problems. So this kind of programming education should be given at all schools, and science technology-based education is required as well. So that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Professor Bhak Jong Hwa. You provide us many things to think about. Now we've listened to the two different presentations in session 3.